Hi, this is Joseph Lo-Presti, once again coming to you from my car, and find it peaceful here. So we're going to continue with the Gospel according to Jesus, and I think it's important to outline what Jesus actually said and bring that to life and compare it to what people, dilettantes of the Bible, like a lot of these televangelists and like Hal Lindsey and Hagee and even Pat Robertson, who seem to be so sincere in giving out the gospel that they forget the actual words that Jesus spoke and meant. And we can read them in context, of course. So it's the gospel according to Jesus. Now, last time I left off with the question that Peter had asked Jesus, what about John? And Jesus told him, what is it to you if John stays until I return, stays alive, that is, till I return? And he even spoke to people and told them, who were not apostles, I believe, or disciples, that some of you will not die until I return. Now we know the apostles died before 70 AD, except for John. So he must have been talking to other people and maybe other disciples of his, but not his apostles. I promised you that I would expound on verse 29, Matthew 24, verse 29. And Matthew 24, verse 29 speaks about the woman and the woman with I'll read it. The sun immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Now, before Jesus comes, or came, I should say, because I believe he came already, this would happen. Now, what is the woman imagery with the sun and moon? We'll find this woman imagery in Revelation 12. Now, Revelation 12, I'll read it to you, and you can make up your own mind. Revelation 12 speaks of a future event to Jesus on earth, and he says in Revelation 12, verse 1, a great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Okay, so the sun darkening and the moon not giving its light is a reference to that woman. And who is that woman? That woman with the 12 stars around her head is Israel, or Judah, because she was about to give birth, and Jesus came from the line of Judah, and Israel, representing Israel. Now, at the death of Christ on the cross, the abomination that caused the desolation, because abominations were placed on him that caused the desolation of the people of Israel from the presence of God. The curtain in the temple was rent in two, separating the curtain separated man from God. Now through Christ Jesus and the death on the cross, that curtain no longer separates mankind from God. We are united through Christ Jesus and the sacrificial blood, his sacrifice on the cross. So what's happened now is that the woman is desolate. Her light doesn't shine anymore. She has lost her luster. She has lost her splendor. And she's become desolate. All right? And then the second half of Matthew 24 speaks about the stars from heaven falling, and the heavens will be shaken. I'll read it. So immediately after, once again, immediately after the distress of those days, and the distress, of course, we covered that. The distress was after the Romans came in and they just wiped everybody out, and then you had the 70 A.D. where you had the temple was destroyed by the Romans, Jerusalem was destroyed, and in my book I cover it, where Vespasian and his son Titus, the Roman general Titus, destroyed the temple and took the temple treasures, and along with 10 to 15,000 Jewish architects and masons built the Colosseum. But that's a side thing. So immediately at verse 29, once again, immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. When something falls from the sky, it comes to earth. All right? Jesus coming in the clouds of the sky, he came to earth. Jesus coming in the clouds of heaven, he goes to heaven. You could see that on Daniel 7. Let me read Daniel 7 to you. This is talking about the Jesus resurrecting. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me, Daniel 7, 13. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given great authority, glory, and sovereign power. All peoples, nations, and men of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. The court was seated in heaven, and the books were open. This is like a judgment on Jesus, and he was judged righteous, and he was given all dominion. All peoples, nations, and men of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, and he will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. All right, so Jesus returned in the clouds of heaven to the Father. Now, what happened when he returned was that Satan was exposed. And we read in Revelation 12 just what happened that caused the heavens, that Jesus revealed in Matthew 24, verse 29, that the stars from heaven fell and the heavens were shaken. And the only way you're going to shake the heavens is if there's a lot of problems. And the problem was that there was war in heaven. Let's go to Revelation. Revelation 12, once again, verse 7. In verse 6, we see that the woman fled after she gave birth to Jesus, and Jesus resurrected and went to heaven, and Satan came after her. And the woman fled into the desert to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of. Verse 7, and there was war in heaven. Imagine that. We think of war, heaven to be a peaceful place, but not at that time. And not ever since Satan showed himself, as Job would mention in Job, where God asked Satan, where have you been? And he goes, to and through the earth, back and forward in the earth. Satan spreading his evil, and in heaven spreading accusations against God's people. So, verse 7, Revelation 12:7, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Isn't that something? I'll even read some more. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. I just mentioned that. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Therefore rejoice in heavens. Rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short. Now that reference, the earth and the sea, it's not so much the sea, and the whole earth, but when we read in Revelation 13, the beast out of the sea, and in verse 1, and in verse 11, the beast out of the earth, we're talking about the beast out of the sea is the nations around the sea area. What sea? The Mediterranean Sea. All right, and we will talk about Israel coming out again from the abyss that God threw it in when he destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, and the power of the holy people was destroyed. And then they came back in 1948. That's the sea area, ISIL, Germany, that whole area, the EU, and the beast out of the earth is the United States of America. And I show it in my book, and we'll go over it here. Okay, so there you have it. Matthew 24 verse 29 is basically talking about Satan getting cast out of heaven to earth. All right, but what's going to happen? And then in verse 30, it continues. It says, at that time. All right, now, the war in heaven happened right away when Jesus went up into heaven and exposed Satan. And so Satan was cast out, and then we had the destruction of Jerusalem, and that's when this says, and Satan was cast out all along there. They had the war in heaven and everything, and then the destruction of Jerusalem and the Great Tribulation, right? All along we had that tribulation period, and those days were shortened. 70 AD after that, it was horrible. And it says that these days were the worst, and there would never be anything worse like that ever again. And then what happened? Verse 30. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of the sky. He's coming here with power and great glory, and he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from the one end of the heavens to the other. That's the resurrection. That's the second coming. And Jesus says, I tell you the truth. Remember that? This generation will certainly not pass away till all these things have happened. And he says it with an oath. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. My friends, you've been fed a lie through these evangelicals and others who say that the second coming didn't happen. The second coming happened. Jesus took his people, the elect, his elect. Okay? And then he sent Paul for you and me, so we can be spiritually grafted into the seed of Abraham, and then all Israel will be saved, because we have to be Israelites in order to be saved. You cannot be saved if you're just an Italian or a Nigerian or whatever, a Gentile you happen to be. No, you have to be grafted into the seed of Abraham through Christ Jesus. Until next time, God bless you, and see you later.